Welcome back. So far, what we've got, if we run this, our maze game, go ahead and get yours open if you haven't gotten yours open already. We have mouse maze game, intro screen, we click start, and then it goes away. Let's actually work on creating the maze. So to begin, we're gonna need three main parts of our maze. We're gonna need a start location, our actual maze, and an end location. So let's create a start location. Okay, so let's make a new layer real quick to work with. I'll put it below intro screen, and we can just call this maze for now. And let's hide our intro screen layer so that way our stage is blank. And let's go ahead and make a start button or location, and you can use whatever color you want really. I'm going to make mine green. I'm going to use my oval tool. I'm going to click and hold shift just to get some kind of oval there, and I'm going to use my text tool now to write the word start on it. I'm going to make sure my color is black or some color where I can actually see that. And I'm going to make sure my font is something I already used, so it could be Oreos for me, or one of these up here. And if not, remember you just have to embed the font again. Okay, so I'm going to use typewriter because I don't feel like embedding anything right now. And I'm just going to write the word start. And you can make it all caps if you want. I'm going to make it all caps. That looks pretty cool. So now I'll go to my selection tool. It's a little too big, so let's shrink this down. I'm going to change the font size to let's say 20. I think 20 will look good. I'm going to select my text and my green circle, and I'm going to align them to the center. There we go. We have a start. I'm going to select them both, tap F8. I'm going to turn them into a movie clip called Start. Or the name could be Start. Let's call it Start space point. Let's call it start point. Okay? And so now what we want to do is we want to make an endpoint that looks exactly the same, just with end instead of start. So let's get rid of our start movie clip on our stage. Go into our library, because we just created start point as the movie clip. And we can just go ahead and right click on it, click duplicate, and instead of start point copy, we want to call this end point. Okay? So now we have start point and endpoint, but they look exactly the same as you see in our little preview here. So make sure you have endpoint selected, double click to go inside, and what we're going to do is we're going to select this, this circle. We're going to change the fill to red. Then we're going to select the text, and with our text tool we're going to change it to end. And it should all be lined up, I believe, if you have it set up properly. And your text should be static text, by the way, if it's not. But select them both, use your align tool, and just align them to the center, so that way we are guaranteed that it's in the middle, and now we can save. And we go back. So now in our library we have an endpoint and a start point. Cool. The next thing we need to do is create our maze. Okay? So to begin, I'm just going to make a black rectangle, okay, on our maze layer. And oops, sorry, I don't want the corners rounded. I had this rounded saved from earlier. So I'm going to reset under rectangle options so that I don't have round corners. Click and drag, doesn't matter what size it is right now. I'm going to select it with my selection tool, go to my align panel, and I'm going to make sure align to stage is checked, and I'm going to match the size of the stage, and I'm going to align it to the center. So now it completely covers my stage. So we're going to select all of this, we're going to tap F8, and we're going to turn it into a movie clip. But this time we're going to do something a little different. The name, let's go ahead and give it a name we can call it Maze 0, Level 0, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call mine Maze, sorry, not 0, excuse me, 1, okay? And you remember, this is going to be very important that you keep the same naming convention. So your second maze is going to be Maze 2. And don't click OK just yet because I'm not done yet. So second maze will be Maze 2, Maze 3, Maze 4, etc. Okay? The very next thing you have to do is under Advanced. We're going to be generating our movie clips with code. In order to do that, you have to drop down this Advanced tab, okay? Click Export for ActionScript, and the name that we're going to be using it should be maze1. So if you name this correctly, the class name should also be maze1. You shouldn't have to change anything. You just have to check export for ActionScript and make sure that this is maze1 and that this is maze1. Okay? And then the next maze you make will say maze2 instead of maze1. Okay, does that make sense? So now if I click OK, it'll give you this message possibly. You can click don't show again, click OK, don't worry about it. And now in our library we have maze1. So now let's go inside of maze1 and create one more layer. So on layer 1 we'll say base, layer 2 we'll say points. Okay, so on our points layer, and actually let's put points underneath base. On our points layer is where we want to drag start point and end point. So we're going to go into our movie clip, or our library, excuse me. We're going to drag start point, which you won't be able to see it because it's underneath. Then we're going to drag an end point. Okay, and you can move these around, it really doesn't matter, but just know that underneath your start point and your end point you need to have blank space. Okay, so if you want to do this for now, that's fine, but lock your points layer, click on base, and we're going to need to erase everything behind our start and end points. Okay, so just get an eraser. All right, let's use this eraser and make sure you're on base. Okay, I'm just going to click right in the center of start and click right in the center of end so that I can see through them. I'm going to drag base to be above points, and now I can see where they are underneath our base layer. Okay, and we can just keep our eraser tool out and just slowly erase until we are sure that every part of our start point is visible. And you can do this in other ways. You could just take a circle, right, draw it over your base. So let's do that for this one. Okay, let's change the color to, let's say, white. I'm going to click dead center of end or somewhere near it, hold shift and alt. I'm drawing this on the base, and I'll kind of approximate how big it is. So now if I use my selection tool and click, because the way drawing works, this circle here overwrote what was on our black square before. So press delete, and now we have a perfect circle around end. So let's actually go ahead and do that over here, over the start, just because that eraser looks kind of ugly. Okay, so you just draw over it. Oops, and that didn't actually cover quite everything. So let's do that. There you go. Use the selection tool, click on it, press delete, and now it's going to erase the black that it overwrote. So for our very first maze, let's make this just a straight line, right, from one point to another. So you can use your line tool if you'd like, and change the stroke to make sure it's a color. So I'll just use, let's say, just so I know what I'm working with, I'll use yellow and make sure the alpha is, the alpha is 100. Okay, why is that so? Oh, I clicked something on accident. So stroke and alpha is 100. And I'm going to change my stroke to as wide as basically I want this to be. So how wide of a path do I want my users to have to go through? Well, if I set it to 5, just get me that. That looks a little narrow, so I'm going to undo that and change this to, let's say, let's try 20. 20 might be a good name. So I'm just click dead center of start, drag it to the dead center of end, and there we go. That's a nice little path. It's maybe a little difficult, but doable, right? So now that's still on our base layer. I'm going to click on that line, and you might have to hold down shift and click on the rest of it if it doesn't select all of it, and tap delete. Oops. Oh, because it's a stroke. No! Okay, so the line tool is not quite going to work. But here is a little trick, okay? Because it's a stroke and not a fill, it's not erasing the fill in the background. But if we select it all, we can go under Modify. Underneath Shape, there's an option that says Convert Lines to Fills. So that'll turn it from a line into a fill whenever you're done. You can see in the top right now it says Shape instead of Stroke. And now if we select it, you should only have to click on it once and press Delete. Now we have a beautiful line going from point A to point B. So cool, that'll do for our first part of our maze. Okay, we're going to lock our base layer, and now we can move points up top if we want. I'm going to unlock points, We're going to select start. Okay. We need to give these instance names. Okay. So select start. I'm going to call it start point MC. Okay. Start point movie clip. Actually, we can just name it start point if you want. Whatever you want to name it, that's fine, as long as you keep it consistent. Okay, you can't use start, I believe, because it's a reserved keyword. But I'm going to use start point MC, and underneath end, I'm going to use end point MC. Okay, and this is very important when you create other mazes that you keep these names exactly the same. So every maze is going to need a base layer where the player is allowed to move their mouse, will have absolutely nothing on it, so it can't be white. Okay, so the white is just a stage in the background here, but if you had a white rectangle, it would still count as a wall in our maze. So we need our maze with all the points we don't want the mouse to go to, colored some color, okay, so that there's actually some kind of coloring there. We need a start point that'll be named the same thing throughout. So each one will have to be called start point MC, and this one will have to be called end point MC, okay? So if you give them different names, it's fine, but just keep it consistent for every maze that you make. So we're gonna go back into our stage. We can delete this maze out of our main little, whatever you wanna call it, little layer here. And actually I think you just get rid of the maze layer. I don't think we need it anymore. But now, if we go into our library, we have endpoint, start point, and maze 1, which should have all that stuff inside of it. Cool. So now that we have a level, let's go into our actions layer. And now that we have one level, let's change last level num to 1, because now we have one level called maze 1. Okay? So now what we need to do is, when the game starts, we need to go ahead and pull out our maze level and add it onto the stage. Well, how do we do that? We're going to do that with a function called getNextLevel. So we'll say function getNextLevel. Okay. It's not going to have any arguments, and we're not going to return anything, so it's going to be void. And then a pair of curly brackets. So what is this going to do? It's going to get the next level and remove any old level we have on the stage. Okay, so this is going to go and pull our next level and get rid of anyone that might already be on the stage. So what we're also going to need is a way to, or function to get rid of an old maze, or I guess that which was the current maze previously, if it existed. So let's make another function and say function remove current maze. Okay. And what's this going to do? This will remove the current maze. Okay. Pretty straightforward. So inside of current maze, well, we want to say if our maze exists, right? So remember I said we're going to use this maze variable to hold our maze. So we're going to say if maze has been given a value, so if maze is not null, okay, it doesn't equal null, which remember I said that null is nothing. It means there's absolutely nothing in there. It's blank. I said it a long time ago. Maybe you don't remember. We're going to say if maze is not null, we are going to remove our maze. And I haven't gone through adding a child yet. So the way you add something to stage, you say add child. There's child-parent relationships. To get our maze onto the stage, we're going to say stage.addChild. To get our maze off of the stage, we're going to say stage.removeChild. Okay? So once we have that, we need to just tell it what we're removing. In this case, we're going to remove maze if it doesn't exist. Okay? So let's go ahead and get the next level. So let's take this function. So first thing we're going to do is remove any maze we already have active, right? Because if we're on level 1, we beat level 1, and we go to level 2, we have to remove level 1, right? We have to remove level 1 before we can add on level 2. Otherwise, we're going to have 2 mazes on top of each other. So we're going to get rid of, say, well, it's not going to do anything because to begin, we don't have a level loaded. So there's no maze, so it's not really going to do anything first time around, okay? Then what we need to do is we need to add to whatever our current level is. So I say increment current level. Okay. So what that's going to do, remember we started our current level as level 0. So to start, we need to make it level 1. So we're going to go back down here. We're going to say, how do we add 1 to a level or number? Current level num. We can say plus plus, which will just add on the number 1 to it. So you can do that. You can say plus equals 1, or you can say current level num equals itself plus 1. Okay, I don't like typing that much, so I'm just going to say plus plus, and if you want to make a note that says, hey, this is just adding 1, go ahead and do it. We're going to increment the current level, so we get, in this case, the first time we do it, we get level 1, and then we need to get, we need to get a couple of things. So before we do anything else, okay, after we get our current level, we need to check to see if the player has beat our game. Okay, and how do we determine whether or not our player has beaten the game? Well, if the current level is greater than whatever we told our game the last level was. So in this case, we said our last level is level 1. If we go into our get next level function and current level ends up being 2, that means they've beaten our maze game. They've beaten every level. So the way we can check for this, we can say if current level num is greater than last level num, then the player has beaten the game. So let me make sure last level num, I did spell that correct. Okay. So right here, we're going to say check to see if player beat the whole game. Okay. And we're going to need a function for u1. Okay. So we'll say function. And let's say, what should we call this? Let's say handle player 1. Okay, 1 is in day 1. It'll return type void. And there we go. Up here, sorry, I just realized this. I did not put a void after remove current maze. You can leave it without it, and Flash just assumes that you don't have a return type, but I like to put it there just in case. But anyway, if the player, let's say, wins our game, right, we need to do what? We need to say that they won. So for now, let's just say trace you won. Okay, so we'll just write out you won. So do important stuff when the player beats the game. Okay, so inside of here, if the player wins, we want to call that function. So say handle player 1. Okay, so now if the player beat the whole game, we're going to say you won, and that's it. We shouldn't do anything else after that, right? So if the player wins, we're going to do that. But if the player does not win, so player hasn't beaten the game yet, so it's just a normal level, right? Just be a normal level. Then we want to go ahead and pull that level. Now, before I do that part just yet, scroll up top. If you remember, we have a level started Boolean. Okay, we said whether or not the current level has been started. When we pull a new level, we need to say that the level hasn't started yet, because the level is not going to start until the player clicks on the start point. So we're going to say level started equals false. Okay, we say, put a comment above it, say level will not start until player clicks start point MC. Okay. Then what we want to do is we want to say, well, we need to actually get the level. And how do we get that level? I'm going to do a little bit of magic here. Okay. So pull the next level with, and I really don't expect you to understand what's going on here, but this comment is going to be that, okay? So we're going to create a variable. I'll try and explain it. If you don't understand this part, don't worry about it. We're going to create a variable that is of type class. And what exactly is a class? Well, it's not a class as in, you know, you're in Mr. Davis's class. A class is basically a group of codes. It's kind of like a function that can hold way more than just a function. So a class could be, technically a movie clip is a class, but a class can be basically a set of variables, code, functions, all that kind of put into a package so that you can get all these things, all these pre-made functions really quick. And that's probably not the best explanation of it in the world, but for now, do not worry too much about it. We're gonna pull our maze class, and the way that we can do that is we can say get definition by name, okay? And then we need to give it a string of what our maze level is named, okay? So we gave it the naming convention of maze, right? And then whatever number, plus whatever number the actual level is. So we're gonna say current level num. So what this is gonna do right here, it's gonna look for something we called maze, what's our current level? Let's say 1, so look for maze 1 and store it in class. And it's gonna get that from our library so we can actually get an instance of our class from our library, or in this case, our movie clip. And get definition by name returns an object. I know that because if I looked it up in the API, and we can't turn an object into a class unless we explicitly tell it that. So the way we do that, I don't know if you remember this from a long time ago, but we can convert something to another data type by saying the data type we want to convert it to. So in this case, I want to convert it into a class, and then just surrounding parentheses, okay? So we say class, and then what we want to convert is going to be inside parentheses, okay? So we're pulling our class, and then what we're going to do is set our maze equal to a new, not new C, camera, sorry, a new C, okay? So what this is going to do is this is going to get, we can maybe put a comment on this, set maze variable equal to current levels maze. So this will pull and put inside of our maze variable our maze that we named and stored in our library, okay? And then if we do this, nothing's gonna happen because when we create this, actually, you know what? I'll leave this just like this for now, and I will explain how this works, okay? So first thing is first. When we start our game, right, we need to get the next level. So let's go to the very bottom of here, and we're gonna call get next level. Actually, I'm sorry, we don't want to do it here. Let's get rid of it. I'm gonna cut it, Control X, or right click and click cut after you select it. And we want to get the next level when the player clicks our start button, right? Game started, and gets rid of our intro screen. So right below game started, say get the first level. So now if we do this, this might throw an error because, where is it? Of this right here, because we're trying to remove it from the stage and it might not exist yet. Let's give this a shot, okay? So I'm gonna run this, and we're gonna click start, and bam, okay, good, we have no problem. But remember now, we set our maze equal to our maze in our library, so right now it should be equal to maze 1, but it's not on the stage. So this thing exists in a variable, but it's not showing up on the stage until we add it to the stage. So how do we add it to the stage? Let's go back to our actions, and where were we? Underneath get next level, okay, we need to just add it to the stage. So we'll say stage dot add child, okay, and then maze. So then maze will be a child of the stage. The stage will be its parent. It means it's inside the stage, it comes from the stage, it's attached to the stage, whatever you want to use to remember that. Let's put a little comment here that'll just say display maze on stage. So let's save and run. And now if we did everything correctly, when we click start, we have a maze pop up. But there's one tiny itty bitty problem that we didn't quite account for, is that our maze has a center point in the center. So what happens is when we set this, when we create this variable, it's starting on the very top left corner at 0, 0. The center point is 0, 0. So we need to move our maze over before we add it to the stage. So let's go to actions. And do you remember how to center something to the stage? Because I do. So right below here, we're going to say maze.x equals stage.stage width, okay, divided by 2. So it'd say center, oh, is that horizontally? I never remember this on the top of my head. Let's say center, yep, center horizontally. So we'll say center horizontally. Okay, and let's just copy this, paste a new line. Instead of X, we want Y. Instead of width, we want height. Oops, H-I-G-H-T. And then we want to center it vertically. Okay. So now if we run this, we have a mouse maze game. We click start, and hey, now we've got a maze. So we have level 1. The very next part will be about actually getting our maze to function. So we've added it in our start screen, and I'll stop here because this video is kind of long.